Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be talking about Mercury Retrograde in March 2025. So let's get some dates out of the way first. As usual, I will put all the dates for the relevant aspects below so that you can have a record of them. So Mercury entered the shadow zone of the upcoming retrograde on the 1st of March 2025. It will station retrograde on the 15th of March at 9 degrees and 35 minutes of the sign Aries. The midpoint of the retrograde will come on the 24th of March. That is the Sun conjunct Mercury at 4 degrees Aries, 24 minutes. Mercury will station direct on the 7th of April at 26 degrees 49 minutes of Pisces. And then Mercury will exit the shadow zone on the 26th of April 2025. So as you can hear, Mercury is actually going to move from Aries through to Pisces during this retrograde period. It's a fascinating retrograde because it's also going to be accompanied by, or maybe we should say Mercury is accompanying Venus as she is retrograde. She's currently retrograde and going across pretty much the same degrees in Aries, then back into Pisces. Both of them traveling reasonably close together, having this long discussion about what we're going to do and what needs to change and where do we need to reevaluate, rethink. There is a very strong sense that part of the task here is to bring heart and mind together. We've just recently had a union between Venus and Mercury before Mercury stationed retrograde. So it's very clear that symbolically speaking, we need to have a talk from the heart to figure things out. Generally, as with any retrograde, we are internalizing the symbolism, the energy, the archetype. So we're going inward to speak to ourselves, to talk to ourselves, particularly in Aries, the sign of the self. We need to have a one-on-one with ourselves to figure out, what do I think? What do I know? What do I think I know? And, what's my opinion on this? Maybe it's less about speaking up right now and more about listening to ourselves. What's going on inside? Because there's so much going on outside right now. We know this. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on out there in the world. We have all the really big astrological changes. We've got the news telling us about these historic meetings and historic things that are going on. And it all feels very, very big. So these two planets, Venus and Mercury, these are personal planets. So right now, it's like we need to come back to the personal. What's going on for me right now? I need to catch up with myself. Mercury retrograde in Aries. So this is where we begin. Mercury stationing retrograde, like I said, on the 15th of March. And the Sabian symbol for this station retrograde is a teacher gives new symbolic forms to traditional images. Remember this because we're going to have a solar eclipse at the end of March, 29th of March. And it's going to be on the same degree. It's just on this degree, exactly at 9 degrees of Aries. Mercury is stationing at 9:35 of Aries. But it's the same degree, the same Sabian symbol. A teacher gives new symbolic forms to traditional images. So in other words, we are learning something about reinterpretation. We've got to reinterpret this material that we have, this opinion, this knowledge, this idea, this discussion, this conversation. There is something about examining it from a different perspective and reframing. So this is what this Sabian symbol is about. It tells us that part of this retrograde is going to ask us to learn to reinterpret things, to see things from a different perspective. Now, Mercury, as it stations retrograde, is also going to be conjunct asteroid Salacia. So Salacia was the wife of Neptune. Kind of interesting because Mercury is going to go back into Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. So we've got some kind of introduction here to a situation that feels like it's slipping away from us, because Salacia in the myths, she was pursued by Neptune. You know, the myths kind of say, oh, he courted her. I mean, he chased her relentlessly. That's not really courting as far as I'm concerned. But he was constantly after her, and so she kept trying to slip away and slip away and slip away, try to get away from him. And maybe that's what's happening with us as well, that we're feeling like whatever we try to sort of grab hold of, this thought, this idea, this concept, this reinterpretation, it kind of feels like it keeps slipping away from us. Now, it also might mean that for some of us, it might be that we're kind of fascinated by a particular idea or a path, a possible path of action, given that we're initially in Aries, which is a very active sign. It's ruled by Mars, who always wants to do something, be fighting for something. You know, he's the soldier, the warrior. So it might be that we find some kind of compelling fascination, that we want to follow this. It's like the sparkling path of sunlight on the sea. And that's kind of Salacia. She is a personification of this, the glittery water itself. And how appealing that is, how hypnotizing that is. Sometimes we can get absolutely captivated with ideas, people, situations. And yet what we see might not be the reality. So I think there are a few different messages going on here. Most of it is just kind of warning us, I think, not to get carried away by something that looks really pretty, because if we get distracted, then we might find that something important kind of slips away from us. So moving on. Now, Mercury is not going to make any aspects at all until it reaches the midpoint of the retrograde. This is really interesting. So we get this complete, clear period of reflection, like literally reflection with Salacia there. So we get this strong period of reflection. What do I think? What do I think? Self-examination. And then we come to the midpoint of the retrograde on the 24th of March. Sun conjoins Mercury. Now we have the illumination that we needed. Now we have the revelation, the idea, the thoughts, the sense that now I know what this is about. Sometimes in practical terms, this is the time when if things have been kind of going wrong, if there's been a problem, this is often the time when the snarl up starts to unravel. We start to be able to see our way through this because we're getting the illumination from the sun. But the more important thing is, even if it's kind of dealing with outer circumstances, the more important situation is what we're learning inside. So we have some kind of sense that now I understand what this situation is. Now, the Sabian symbol for this is a triangle with wings. This always just makes me think of an aeroplane. So we have the idea with wings that this is an elevation. The triangle can represent both male and female, masculine, feminine energies, depending on whether it is upright or inverted. So it's a blending of everything together. And we have this idea of transcendence because there are wings. So something about this midpoint, the cosimi, when Mercury sits on the throne of the sun, something about this moment tells us that we are rising above, we are transcending the problem. It's encouraging us to once again get a different perspective. When you go up, you start to see the big picture. So there is something about the big picture being revealed to us around this time. We get a hint of something more. On the 25th of March, the day after, we have the midpoint. Mercury then forms a sextile to Pluto. So now we have an invitation, the sextile, to engage the power of the mind. The mind is powerful, says Mercury sextile Pluto. Your mind is powerful. You just need to set your mind to the task at hand to change things, to transform things. And in fact, when you change your mind, you change your circumstances. Mercury sextile Pluto. Then Mercury continues back through Aries, hitting that 0 degrees of Aries around 29th of March and moves into Pisces on the 30th of March. So it's going to, around those dates, it's going to hit that 0 degrees of Aries and then 29 Pisces. These 2 degrees that over and over and over and over again this year keep coming up. I've talked about them before. It's worth mentioning it every single time. We're having big endings, 29 Pisces, big beginnings, 0 Aries. It's like the signature of the year. Huge cyclic endings, huge cyclic beginnings. Mercury is putting us in touch with this again, as will Venus. Venus is going over the same degrees as I said before. 0 degrees Aries is the Aries point. It is extremely animated. I would anticipate that as Mercury goes over this degree, there may be some kind of news, but we need to hold that thought because Mercury is moving backwards. Mercury then goes back into Pisces and the quality of this retrograde begins to change because we're changing the element, we're changing the sign. So now there is this sense that we are really beginning to listen to the soul's message, Pisces. We need to check in with our intuition. We really need to check in with what we're feeling. Aries is very fiery and very confident usually, whilst Mercury is going backwards and Venus is going backwards through it. We might not be feeling quite so confident, which can sort of feel a bit frustrating. But again, it has purpose because we need to be sure of what we're saying before we say it, or before we decide, or before we agree. So now we've got Mercury going back into Pisces and moving back into our Pisces house. And it's saying your inner voice, your soul's voice is the one that needs to take over here. You need to listen to your dreams, meditate, take time out, listen to some music, just get in touch with what you're feeling, because this is a wonderful, imaginative placement. So what's going on in your imagination? What are you imagining? Mercury in Pisces. Let's revisit this. Maybe this is what needs to be changed. Sometimes we can be talking about things to our friends and, our neighbours and our family. We can be talking about these things, and in the daytime we're working really hard on our plans and goals and objectives and all the things we want to do in life. And then when it comes to sort of nighttime and you get into bed, and then the mind starts ruminating, wondering what is going on? Do I really feel this? And we start to second guess ourselves and all of our fears kind of bubble up. So maybe we're just revisiting some of this to clear the way, to get this clear so that we can dispel some of these fears and imaginings and let the inner voice guide us. Now, as Mercury goes back into Pisces, it is immediately going to run into Neptune, because Neptune is actually at 29 degrees of Pisces and 59 minutes, literally 1 minute away from Aries. So this is like the anaretic degree of Pisces, the final degree of the entire zodiac. And in fact, it's the final minute. This is the most acute that this degree can be. So we have an enormous wave. I want to say almost like a psychic wave, because it's a combination of Mercury and Neptune. This is like spirit speak, universal speak. This is kind of interdimensional. It kind of feels like something that's rippling out across all timelines. Something is going on here that is communicated to us in a very subtle way. This is, again, the time to be quiet, to listen, to let the gods kind of speak to us, to let Neptune speak to us. And then as Mercury moves backwards on the 4th of April, it will run into the North Node. So the North Node points to where we need to go to for our soul's growth. And here in Pisces, we are developing these Pisces qualities, which is all about compassion and empathy, unity, peace. Pisces is soft and sensitive, and we need to be sensitive in how we communicate with one another. Mercury conjunct the North Node, and once again, we are getting messages coming through the ether, coming through from outer space. Who knows? Anything could happen this year. So yeah, coming from outer space, something is coming to us. A word, a thought, a conversation, an idea, Mercury, that is in some way opening the way, the North Node. On the 7th of April, Mercury will then station direct, 26 degrees Pisces, 49 minutes. And so now we have the turnaround. Now we start to sense that things are beginning to move forwards. We're able to move forwards again. It's going to take a little bit of time because naturally we have the shadow period, the other side of the Mercury retrograde. So that's going to last up until the 26th of April. But on the 7th of April, we start to get that sense things are beginning to move forwards. We might want to give ourselves a little bit of time before we kind of make any really big decisions because we want Mercury to find his feet. But just generally, we're moving forwards again. The Sabian symbol of Mercury stationing direct is the harvest moon illumines a clear autumnal sky. So this is an interesting follow-up to the triangle with wings. I was talking about elevation and rising above, getting up beyond the clouds with the planes. And now here we have a clear autumnal sky. So the clarity of the sky makes me think that this Mercury retrograde has had the effect of clearing the mind, clearing the head, so that we can harvest, so that we can make the best of our situation, so that we can get what we need from life. So there is a feeling of clarification and a clear sense of what we are able to do, what we are able to get. We become more aware of life's abundance. Sometimes if we're thinking in the negative, perhaps before this retrograde sort of comes in, we're starting to feel a bit negative about certain things. That's why we're being asked to reframe them initially. And when we're kind of thinking in the negative, we can't see what's actually available to us. We can't see how abundant life is. But this Sabian symbol and just the movement from, Aries to Pisces and then Pisces back to Aries makes me feel like we are clearing the way and we're realizing that there is so much more to us. There's so much more to life. Asteroid Emma is also going to be conjunct this Mercury station direct as well. So those of you who are called Emma, maybe this particular retrograde is going to kind of speak to you. Or if you know someone called Emma. But Emma actually means whole or universal. So generally speaking, I feel like it's just saying we're coming back to a feeling of wholeness after this retrograde period. Mercury will then, in direct motion now, of course, move back into Aries on the 16th of April. And as I said, will complete this retrograde period on the 26th of April, exiting the shadow zone. So it's going to be a very interesting retrograde period for us because all of us, I think I mentioned this in my Venus retrograde video. If you haven't seen that, that is on my channel here on YouTube, where I dissected the Venus retrograde, the same as I have done with this Mercury retrograde. But for all of us, we are going to have this double energy, this double up of retrograde energy in our Aries house and in our Pisces house. So check which areas of life these houses cover for you, because these are the areas of life that the cosmos is saying a reevaluation is necessary here. It's time to rethink this. And even if there is a problem in these areas, or there's just some kind of slowdown or frustration, annoyances, or you feel like you want to escape from it and just run away from it, whatever is going on during the retrograde period, or the retrogrades, Venus and Mercury, just remember that this is happening to bring heart and mind together. And by the time Venus and Mercury have completed their entire cycle, moved beyond their shadow periods, these areas of life are going to look very different, but you'll be in a much better situation to make the best of your life. This brings me to the end of this exploration of Mercury retrograde. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do click a like and subscribe. It always does help the algorithm. You can hit the notification bell and YouTube will tell you every time I put up a video. If you would like to hear more from me, I do have Substack and Patreon, a website, social media. I post every day on social media, so all those links are below. I will see you again soon, and in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.